You see a lot of FUD. And if you take a step back and you ask yourself, what are people really complaining about? Are they complaining about the fact that they're losing money? No. Are they complaining about the fact that Cardano has shut down? No. It's not even unusable. If it was unusable, transactions wouldn't be going through. They're complaining about the thing the very same people were calling a ghost chain with no users and no utility is being used too much. It's like a restaurant where the wait is too long. I'm thinking about how do I franchise the restaurant instead of, God, this restaurant's going to go out of business and shut down.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. And you guessed it, today we are going to be talking about Cardano, and I'm going to be showing you guys some really interesting things taking place in the Cardano ecosystem. Now, Charles Hoskinson made a video yesterday that was titled Scaling, where he looked at the different ways in which Cardano plans on scaling. And the video that we played at the start was him kind of summarizing and saying it's rather ironic that the very same people that were calling Cardano a ghost chain are now also highlighting the fact that it's too used. And of course, this video I think was made in response to a number of things. Of course, that criticism to start things off, but also Cardano's blocks are getting pretty full. And in the video that we'll leave a link to in the description from Charles Hoskinson, he does break down a way that you can actually scale the underlying layer 1, that you can introduce layer 2s and partner chains and things like that to help scale out the network. And of course, one of my favorite ways to scale that I'm super excited about, which is input endorsers. Now, this goes back to Charles Hoskinson's original whiteboard video back, I think, in 2015, where he set out this kind of vision for Cardano of basically being multi-chain, kind of having this parallel chain system. And once we've flown through what we want to get through, we're going to be showing you daily active wallets going through the roof. We're going to be showing you the fact that the Cardano chain is pretty full and blocks are consistently becoming full, which I think is a good thing, but may become an issue if it continues and kind of demand becomes more and more of a thing. I also want to quickly fly by CoinShares' report that Cardano was one of the biggest beneficiaries in regards to exchange traded products. It saw some of the biggest inflows out of all the altcoins. We'll quickly look at the price and then we'll finish the video off on a video of him sort of talking a little bit more about input endorsers, which was the initial concept that got me very excited in regards to Cardano. So let's dive in probably to what this video was made in response to, and this is from Stake with Pride over on Twitter, good account to follow if you're into Cardano. He's essentially showing here that the vast majority or a large part of the Cardano blocks are actually full or getting filled. And this begs the question, what happens if demand increases and there's not the capacity to deal with it? Well, in the video, like I said, Charles breaks down actually scaling on the layer 1. So perhaps increasing the block size, increasing kind of efficiency and various methods of efficiency in regards to processing transactions, and a number of other ways which you can scale the layer 1. He then spoke about layer 2s like Hydra and Mithril and what this is going to mean. He then introduced things like partner chains and sort of special purpose chains that we have coming this year with the likes of Midnight. He then goes on to talk about my favorite way of scaling, which is input endorsers. It's basically a case of having the layer 1 and then being able to run multiple different kind of chains that all consent with the layer 1 and consented through the layer 1, but you can essentially infinitely scale by taking traffic onto these other chains, these input endorsers that run concurrent. So very interesting video. Like I say, we'll talk about that a bit more at the end. So I don't really think that this is going to become a major issue. I do think there is an issue though, however, with if a institution or a business or a company wanted to use Cardano at the moment and it had a high TPS or transaction rate of whatever it is it's doing, it is an issue, but there is a clear path forward for scaling. I don't think Cardano's layer 1 is ever going to be drastically scalable. I think it's going to be done through taking traffic off the layer 1, like the layer 2s and certainly the input endorsers. But this was interesting. It kind of brought up a whole interesting conversation. The next thing I want to go over to is actually showing you guys the daily active ADA addresses, the transaction volume, and the whale transaction count, which is all moving in the right direction pretty perfectly, actually, in line with the price recently. Remember, we did look at a graph that was showing institutional holdings in regards to Cardano, and actually that had gone up perfectly with the price. Institutions are always privy to information. This is happening at a time where we are looking at a technical pattern that we do think is going to see Cardano run to the $2.10 mark and then potentially higher. But we'll be doing a video on our higher target and how it may play out at a later date. The last thing really for me to fly into before we finish the video off with Charles Hoskinson talking about input endorsers is CoinShares' report. Now, this is a great report. It's something I check every Monday morning, or it's more like Monday afternoon for me, morning in the US. They essentially comprise all the exchange traded products as they derive from the cryptocurrency space, crypto asset flows, and essentially compile it into a report that's really useful. We saw a record week we've seen in the first 2 months, we've seen basically more volume than pretty much the entirety of 2021, which was the raging bull market. Point on the price. You guys know that we did give a price prediction. We do think you're on your way to that $2.10 mark. We expect this support to hold which was previous resistance that has set up this inverse head and shoulders as support. We also looked at a number of interesting things like ADA BTC, which is also at support, and ADA dominance, again at support. We did a whole video on this and how we expected this to now be in an uptrend, just like the price, which means ADA is going to gain market share. The last thing for me to do, guys, on this video is to dive over to Charles Hoskinson talking about input endorsers, which is something I'm personally stoked about and goes back to his original vision for Cardano that he highlighted on this whiteboard video titled Cardano Whiteboard. I think this was in 2015. You can see how you've got the kind of main chain and then you have chains that run off at these parallel systems. Let's dive over to that clip and then I'm going to love and leave you.
Most people are interested in, this is the sexiest part, it's had many names: parallel chains, input endorsers, Laos, etc., etc. This is under heavy review and construction, and this paper is almost out. We've been saying it for a while. Agalos and I go back and forth on this one, but we're actually pretty happy with the direction this is going. Now, what that does is allows us to go back. You remember my whiteboard video where you don't really have a blockchain anymore. You know, blockchain, you have things in a very sequential way, and they're of different sizes, and they all are linked to each other, right? You kind of move to a different model where you have a whole network and ecosystem of stuff that happens asynchronously. Okay, and this ecosystem of things eventually gets stitched back together. So you have all this stuff in here. This concept of input blocks and key blocks. Now, what this allows you to do is massively improve your throughput, and your throughput is asynchronous. Okay, so your TPS rate, or in our case, TPT, transactions per transaction, goes way up. Way up. And you have to reconcile it. So there's a whole bunch of magic in the security world that goes into how that reconciliation happens. But you're never really throughput limited, because as long as things don't contradict each other, it goes into this blob. So for example, right now we're under load because I think there's an NFT drop going on, and typically that creates a high degree of load. So it just happens. Things are occurring. It's not really a problem. At some point, it stitches itself back together. And there are special rules within this blob to do this in a way where you can't contradict.
Really interesting. Again, something that got me into Cardano back in the 2018 bear market. You know, it really got me thinking about things, watching those whiteboard videos. I think it was quite obvious that the reality of these blockchains is that they can't scale to the degree on their own, perhaps, that would be needed without things like input endorsers or layer twos and things like that. And I think that's very much the roadmap for Ethereum, very much the roadmap for many. And the good news here is that this is going to be coming out. Laos is going to be the white paper that's going to outline this. This is going to be coming out soon, I believe, or the paper, not the white paper, that's going to outline this. But for now, Cardano is very much focused on scaling, so it doesn't have issues on the layer one through optimizing the blocks and increasing the block time, and also through its layer twos like Hydra and things like that. Again, link to that in the description. But very, very excited. Things are moving in the right direction for Cardano and the general cryptocurrency space. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comments section. I would love to hear them. And on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. See you in the next one.